What if the next chapter of the American dream isn't in America at all? In 2025, a quiet reversal began. Thousands of African Americans, many with six-figure incomes and U.S. passports, started packing up, not for a vacation, but for a homecoming. From Atlanta to Accra, from Chicago to Nairobi, a new migration is taking shape. One Western media barely mentions. Real estate agents in Ghana report us buyers paying cash for land. Fast-growing startups in Lagos are recruiting black engineers. And more than $2.4 billion in private remittances flowed from the U.S. to African cities last year, not as charity, but as investment. Why leave the richest nation on earth? The answer isn't nostalgia. It's awakening. For many, the land of opportunity has begun to feel like the land of exhaustion, sky-high living costs, the daily microcuts of discrimination, and a quiet cultural fatigue that money can't fix. Meanwhile, Africa, narrated as a continent in need, is rewriting the script, building data hubs, launching AI factories, and insisting on owning its minerals instead of exporting them raw. Beneath the headlines is a deeper question about identity, sovereignty, and the real meaning of freedom. If one dream is dimming, could an African renaissance be the new beginning? They call it the invisible tax. Not the one you file with the IRS, the one deducted from the soul. Every second guess, every where are you really from, every stalled promotion. A Pew study notes that 73% of black professionals say they're judged by appearance or speech at work. The cost: burnout, isolation, the slow erosion of Imagine graduating with $120,000 in student loans, earning a six-figure salary, and still being asked if you belong in the boardroom. It's not history, it's Tuesday, and like compound interest, the stress grows quietly year after year. If the richest nation can't guarantee emotional safety, where does true freedom live? This story isn't about surrender, it's about survival. Migration isn't running away, it's recalibration. Many are realizing peace of mind can be worth more than a 401k. Raising children where their skin is normal, not noticed, feels like the real investment. As flights from New York to Accra fill each month, a question echoes: is the road back to Africa less an escape and more a return to equilibrium? Technology is reopening the map of memory. With a $99 DNA test, people trace ancestral threads to Sierra Leone, Nigeria, and Ghana, turning data into destiny. Since 2019, searches for African heritage on popular DNA platforms have surged, evidence of a generation reconnecting what history tried to cut apart. Ghana's Year of Return wasn't just a tourism campaign, it was a spiritual milestone. Over 1 million visitors stood before the door of no return and renamed it the Door of Return. Homes were bought, businesses founded, schools opened, from Accra to Freetown, turning pain into purpose. This is more than travel. It's restoration, from data to dignity, from exile to embrace. If tech can reconnect bloodlines, can it also rebuild a continent's collective memory and shape its shared future? Across the continent, something steady and unstoppable is unfolding. The narrative once written by others is being written by Africans themselves. From the tech corridors of Nairobi to the investment zones of Accra. From Kigali's innovation hubs to Lagos's buzzing ports. Africa isn't the world's afterthought, it's the world's next chapter. 4 of the world's fastest growing economies are African. FDI is rising, but beneath the charts is something more powerful, a sense of ownership coming home. For many returnees, this isn't about romance, it's about leverage. A dollar that barely covers rent in Los Angeles can build a 2-story house in Ghana. $50,000 can seed an e-commerce or clean energy startup in Kenya. Governments are rolling out incentives, tax holidays, repatriation grants, and simplified residency programs. Rwanda's homecoming funds and Ghana's Diaspora summits are turning emotion into opportunity. In Lagos, mobile-first fintechs move tens of billions yearly. In Kigali, green tech startups power entire districts. Ambition isn't gated. Innovation breathes. This isn't charity. It's recalibration, a capitalism tuned to collaboration, not gatekeeping. Mini hook. Number 3. If wealth in the West feels inherited. Could Africa be one of the last places where success is still created? For years, corporate America called itself a family. Team lunches, diversity slogans, friendly smiles. But for many, it was belonging with conditions. The invisible weighted vest never came off. In Africa, for the first time, it often does. Landing in Accra or Kigali feels different. The air carries no measuring gaze. People greet you with recognition. Neighbors invite you to dinner. Strangers call you brother, sister, auntie, uncle. Not a slogan, a culture. Surveys of returnees describe higher emotional safety and social value than they felt in the U.S. in villages along Ghana's Cape Coast and in towns across Sierra Leone. DNA results have become invitations to dinner tables. Families separated for centuries reconnect over food and song. It isn't about wealth, it's wholeness. Creativity returns. Confidence grows. Purpose awakens. When you stop performing and start belonging, the heavy vest is replaced by the lightness of identity. If home is not where you were born, but where you're understood, could Africa be where millions finally breathe freely? Sometimes the pivot is just practical. In Brooklyn, $3,000 barely covers a small apartment. In Dar es Salaam or Accra, that same amount can mean a 3-bedroom home with a courtyard, household help, and dinners under the open sky. In Tanzania, a private driver might cost around a couple $100s a month. In Ghana, private health insurance can be a fraction of U.S. premiums. Fresh mangoes, avocados, fish caught that morning everyday abundance at everyday prices. It's not just cheaper living, it's fuller living. Of course, Africa has its rhythm. Power cuts, bureaucracy, patchy internet. But for builders, those are openings, not obstacles. Across Nigeria and Kenya, returnees are investing in solar startups. In Ghana and Rwanda, families have launched private schools, logistics firms, and eco-friendly cooperatives. The problems they once complained about in the West have become the very markets they now solve. And there's real control. In America, most are renters in systems they didn't design. In Africa, many become owners, creators, decision-makers. Digital banking and local fintech, from mobile money in East Africa to rising platforms in West Africa, make financial mobility increasingly borderless. Many earn in dollars, spend locally, and reinvest in African infrastructure. Reports estimate returnees can save 40 to 60% on monthly expenses versus a comparable U.S. lifestyle. The biggest gain, though, isn't financial. It's psychological.com, replacing constant grind. If a dollar buys comfort in Africa but only survival in America, where does the real wealth of life lie? Governments aren't asking for aid. They're inviting partnership. In Accra, Diaspora return programs offer multi-year residency options. In Kigali, homecoming initiatives bring tax exemptions on imported goods and reduced property tariffs. Near Dakar, special zones are being set aside for diaspora housing and business. The African Union estimates returnees inject billions annually into local economies via tech, real estate, and education. This isn't symbolic. It's a transfer of human capital. The continent offers fertile ground, policy support, and talent. The diaspora brings capital, expertise, and global networks. The result? A reversal of brain drain into brain gain. Wall Street analysts now build fintech rails in Lagos, moving over $1 billion each month. Architects in Kigali shape eco-friendly districts from local materials. Artists in Accra blend African rhythms with Western production into genres that rack up billions of views. It's a geopolitical rebalancing, African roots plus American hustle. Fluent in two worlds, understanding Silicon Valley logic while beating with Africa's pulse. Each returning mind becomes a new node in a continental network of influence. If power once flowed out of Africa through ships and contracts, could it now be flowing back through talent, technology, and vision? This is no longer an elite experiment. It's a growing middle-class movement. A retired bus driver from Chicago lives comfortably in Senegal on $1,200 a month. A teacher from Houston runs a language school in Kigali, earning the same but spending far less. Remote workers who once paid $5,000 a month to just exist in New York now plug in from Accra, Dar es Salaam, or Cape Town. These aren't stories of escape, they're stories of recalibration. Stability over struggle. Community over isolation. Purpose over prestige. Retirement, too, is being rewritten. That monthly Social Security check that barely stretches in the U.S. buys ocean view mornings, organic meals, and time that isn't scheduled to death. Aging becomes integration, not isolation. Neighborhoods instead of nursing homes. Drum circles instead of silence. Elders open studios in Zanzibar, mentor entrepreneurs in Kigali, and teach English in Dar. In cultures where wisdom is still currency, the elderly return not to fade, but to guide. The loneliness of the West dissolves into the belonging of the village. What if retirement isn't the end of productivity, but the rediscovery of humanity in Africa? Its capital no great journey comes without friction. Culture shock is real. Life can move slower. Bureaucracy can require 3 office visits instead of 1 email. Dialects, customs, and gestures matter. Politics can feel unpredictable. Yet surveys show most returnees plan to stay. Why? Because stress drops, sleep improves, families reconnect. Private healthcare is affordable. And maybe for the first time, time belongs to you. The struggles of adjustment become small prices for a life that feels authentic and whole. History, they say, moves in circles. One of humanity's longest circles is closing, slowly, powerfully. Inevitably, the descendants of those who were taken are returning, not as victims of history, but as its editors. What was forced exile is becoming a voluntary homecoming. For the United States, it's a mirror reflecting a system that promised equality but often delivered exhaustion. For Africa, it's a recharge of the world's most resilient battery. The human spirit, capital, creativity, and consciousness are flowing home across Accra, Lagos, Nairobi. The continent isn't asking for permission to rise. It's writing its own terms of engagement. Return by choice, not in chains. Conclusion plus call to action isn't just migration. It's momentum, a quiet rewriting of power, purpose, and place. Not everyone will move, and not everyone must. What matters is that, for the first time in centuries, the choice exists. Migration, not as escape, but as evolution. What do you think? Is this the next chapter of the American dream or a new dream altogether? Tell us in the comments. If this story challenged your assumptions, share it with someone who needs to see it, and subscribe for more deep dive documentaries on how the world is being remade, one choice at a time.